Chapter 25 Dazara Lore. They left Zakan behind in the Zocalo with Talanji's personal physicians, the priests and shaman who tended to any member of her family or the Zanchuli Council. Bwonsamdi could make his own way to the palace, but Talanji urged her Ravissor Tazina to her greatest speed. The beast took the stairs 4 at a time, carrying the queen to her chambers with Gonk's own swiftness. Night would soon give way to dawn, but Talanji felt no closer to victory. In fact, she only felt closer to death, which meant closer to the maw. Bwonsamdi had said it cost him dearly to keep troll souls from the maw, and it cost her dearly just to walk now, every step a chore. Her heavy heart did nothing to ease the pain surging through her body. They had lost too many trying to protect the final shrines. Dark Rangers had helped lay the traps that defeated her warriors, and her old dear friend had been spotted among the Widow's Bite. No, not just among them, leading them. "We saw a witch with the rebels," one of the surviving Rastari guards reported while the healers covered poor burned Zakan in salve. "She was misshapen with injury, and wore a strange garb, but I have seen her face in the palace countless times before, my queen. It was a pari. I would know the look of her anywhere." A pari. Talanji reached her chambers and decreed to the guards that she would be taking no visitors. One would arrive, of course, but he did not need a door. While she waited for Bwonsamdi to appear, Talanji drifted to the bed, wishing she could simply sleep and dream and try to forget the horrors that seemed to multiply by the hour. Once, she considered Sylvanas an ally, and now the Banshee Queen's forces emboldened rebels trying to tear down Talanji's rule. That stung. But a pari's betrayal. Talanji sighed, sitting heavily on the mattress and removing her crown. She rubbed at her aching forehead with both hands. As girls, they had been a couple of pests, running wild in the halls of the Great Seal, causing trouble wherever and whenever they wanted. They had perfect immunity, Talanji's princess status granting them more power than any child should have. They played pranks in the gardens, splashed in the pools, stayed up late every night and lay on their backs staring up at the stars, spinning prophecies for each other. When they were grown, Apari's loyalty never wavered, though she had every right to be jealous of Talanji's status and riches. "Even Yasma," Talanji murmured. "Even after all that." Apari's mother, High Priestess of the Loa Shadra, the Crown's own spy mistress, had fomented rebellion too, conspiring with Zul to overthrow Rastakhan and end his line. But Apari stood by Talanji. She disowned her own mother and chose the Crown's side. So what changed? What drove her to this? Her last image of Apari was one of paralyzing pain. It was the day King Rastakhan died at the hands of the Alliance. Gnomish siege weapons assaulted the Great Seal, walls crumbling, ceilings caving in. Reports had come that her father was facing the Alliance himself, hopelessly outnumbered, and Talanji had raced to aid him, pelting through the halls, dodging debris and danger, as she tried to save her father. That was when she last saw Apari. Her friend had been pinned under a fallen pillar, blood trailing from her lips, her eyes bugging from her skull as she strained to push the stones off her lower body. Her mouth seemed to move on its own, as if in prayer. Her voice was hoarse as her weak gaze found Talanji. "Help me, Tali! Help! I can't move. Talanji had only paused for a moment, weighing impossible scales. Her best friend or her father. I am a princess, she had thought. My first duty is to my family and to our rule. She left Apari there, choosing Rastakhan. I will send someone for you, Apari, Talanji had shouted as she ran. Hold on! Then the memory collapsed, time distorted, the experience of finding her father's nearly lifeless body corrupting what came before and after. She remembered screaming and pointing at a royal guard at one point, but had it been for Apari? Had she forgotten, in all the chaos, to help her dying friend? I failed so many, she whispered. Ah, but my queen, there is still time to protect me and your kingdom. Bwansamdi. Talanji lifted her head slowly, finding him there by the door, all but a ghost, the golden columns behind him perfectly visible. Just raising her head took monumental strength, as if her skull were now made of lead. Her neck ached, her back splintered in agony in 4 places. His power was fading because she had rashly sent her troops to defend the shrines without a plan. And now her power faded too, her life intertwined with his by no wish or action of her own. It would take too much energy to hate him. Please, she murmured. I feel so lost. Please let me see my father. He would know what to do. I promise to protect you, but I cannot do it alone. Summon his spirit, Bwansamdi. He floated closer, a grim frown etched across his face, and Talanji dreaded his refusal. Shuffling to the balcony, she beheld her crumbling kingdom. Would Thrall even return? Perhaps if word reached him that his ambassador had nearly been killed in the shrine assault, he would reconsider his offer to bring support. If that was so, they were truly lost. She gripped the railing, digging her nails into the soft gold. The nail on her middle finger cracked, blood oozing through the gap. And of course, Bwansamdi followed, lingering behind her, emitting his bleak aura of decay. You need to find your own strength, he rasped, his voice as weak as his image. Your own way. The Zandalari way, Talanji scoffed. It failed. I failed. Like I failed my father. Like I failed Apari and Zakan. It might sound strange coming from the lower of graves, but there is always hope, your majesty. Bwansamdi joined her, his eyes glowing faintly behind his bone mask. Death brings life. The great wheel turns, slowly, yes, over eons. But it turns. Bodies decay and new life springs from it. All things that seem eternal end, then rise to find new purpose. Talanji gazed up at him, her heart beating faster. Then my father... Shh, you're not listening, child. You're only hearing what you want to. There is a harmony to things, a way and a flow. Ancient ones, spirits, loa. In time we too must embrace the end, the long, deep slumber. And without us, our followers find strength in other things, in themselves or new beliefs. They grieve, they grow, just like you. And when the veil of dreaming lifts, the eternal and great beings climb on the wheel once more, bound to it, and slowly, ever so slowly, the wheel spins. He paused, waiting until she locked eyes with him. In that way, the ancient and powerful things of this world are eternal, Your Majesty. Zandalar, she breathed. The fires burned in the jungle. Smoke rose above the trees. Out there, hidden in the shadows, the Dark Rangers and Apari with her Widow's Bite fanatics plotted their next move. It is not lost. It is never lost. The Loa nodded, his frown at last dissolving into a familiar smirk. I am weak, but not gone. They will try to take the necropolis now, my place of power. Stop them there, and I will help ya rebuild this land. But I cannot do it alone, Talanji whispered, frail. How she wished she could speak to her father, just for a moment. But Rastakhan himself had failed many times, his complacency and neglect bringing about the darkest times of their rule. It brought her no joy to think ill of her father, and so instead, she chose to think better of something else. The ancient and powerful things of this world are eternal, and so was hope. The Horde will come, Talanji murmured, turning away from Bwansandi to survey her lands. They burned, they struggled, and she would worry every moment until they were safe. But they were hers. A queen's to protect, a queen's to honor. Once, she said softly, I left my home, desperate to save this place. I risked my pride and my life, but I turned to the Horde, and they answered my call. They did not let Zandalar stand alone. Tonight, the Horde ambassador did not let my people stand alone. He nearly gave his life to save our children. I have to risk my pride and my life once more. I have to believe the Horde will stand with us again, to fight this darkness, to raise a light together, and banish the shadows from Zuldazar forever. Chapter 26, Nazmir. Did you have your fun? Sierra Moonwarden pushed off from the damp, crooked tree trunk and snorted. Fun? She had lost the meaning of the word when she rose anew in undeath. In the shallow clearing off the road, the Widow's Bite leaders spoke in low tones to her followers. They were in a celebratory mood. The shrines had fallen. More had come to join the Widow's Bite in the wake of their campaign, their numbers swelling to more than 40 trolls and 20 Dark Rangers. Apari did not have armaments for them all, but the Dark Rangers provided daggers and bows. Their blades were sharp, their spirit undeniable. All that remained was the final assault on the necropolis, and then they could finally leave wretched Zandalar for Sylvanas Windrunner's side, their task complete. Victory made her bold. She ignored Nathanos. Those theatrics with the children, Nathanos clarified, stepping deliberately in front of her, blocking her path. I trust it sated your bloodlust for the moment. Behind him, a blood-red dawn broke, bathing the necropolis in a crimson glow. Swarms of flies thick enough to eat a man whole gathered above the quaggy water, separating them from the Zobal ruins. The combined Dark Ranger and Widow's Bite contingencies avoided the direct road, wary of alerting any remaining Rastari enforcers of their whereabouts.
I never took you for a man with a weak stomach, Blightcaller.
Nathanos rolled his eyes, one hand resting on a dagger tucked in his belt, the other fiddling with the feathers of an arrow sticking out from his hip quiver. You risk galvanizing the Zandalari to greater purpose. Our plans have proceeded nicely because the Queen is isolated. Grant her a few orc battalions and our odds change significantly.
They have lost, she replied bluntly. The storms will cut off any reinforcements by sea, and our traps will slow any soldiers arriving by land.
To punctuate her point, she shrugged and removed her helmet, rotting fragrantly inside the clammy metal dome. Nathanos took a few steps toward the dusty path leading to the Zobal ruins. They had already sent scouts ahead. Now they waited on reply.
Is this not the hell our queen seeks to correct? Is this not the hell she will save us from? Teldrassil burned, Darkshore burned. I assure you far more than 2 screaming brats were killed.
Indeed, Sira, you have made your point. Here is Vizerin. Their forward party returned, Vizerin and Lelius emerging from the shadows with their hoods drawn up high over their heads. Vizerin's wrist was held together with a tight bandage. Removing her hood, she pointed back the way they had come. Mist hugged the ground, partially obscuring the mire and the fragments of stone littering the path to the necropolis. There was only one safe approach, to secure the Zobal ruins and use the passable bridge through the murky water to get to the temple itself. Among the mist, Sira spied what looked like paler wisps, ghosts or spirits, echoes of Bwonsamdi's followers drawn to his seat of power.
There is a small standing force. The Queen must have sent them,
Vizerin reported, her eyes shining brightly against the red flowers tattooed on her face.
But we outnumber them.
They do not stand a chance, sir, Lelius agreed.
The camp is largely pilgrims. We could take prisoners and forego bloodshed.
Sira fidgeted with her helmet, displeased. You have thoughts, Sira? Nathanos drawled, clearly poking at her.
They should suffer as we suffer,
Sira replied. The round red moon hanging above them drew her gaze, and she spat.
Unlife's only pleasure is to spill blood before a loon. The goddess did not save me. I wonder, will anyone come to save this Loa?
A pity there are only a handful of soldiers and pilgrims to dispatch. Nathanos plucked the glove from his right hand and gave a short whistle. The celebrating in the clearing died down, and slowly the Widow's Bite rebels came to mingle with them near the road. Apari could hardly walk, but she held her head high, that loathsome little tick perched on her shoulder. A distinct odor of infection came with her, and Sira could see the other Zandalari trying not to hold their noses around her, and visibly keeping their distance. The ruins are ours to take, Nathanos announced. Prepare yourselves. I shall tolerate a short rest once we secure the ruins, and make camp before our final assault. The trolls swarmed to the east, following Vizerin and Lelius as they led the charge. Apari stood before him, her face and hair damp with sweat behind her unsettling mask. It made for a wretched sight, yet the trolls smiled with beatific calm, watching her troops stalk toward the ruins under the blood moon.
You do not look well, Sira remarked. Lelius is a skilled healer. She can ease the pain of your leg.
Apari trembled, her green skin patchy and pale. It looked as if even drawing breath gave her great discomfort, but the troll waved her off.
No, that will not be necessary.
Her bodyguard, Tayo, flinched.
The Widow's Bite are loyal to you and you alone,
Sierra continued, impatient. The troll's pride astounded her. Such foolishness would lead her to an early grave.
We need you to survive until the Loa is no more.
Behind her mask, Apari's eyes danced bright.
That is all I live to see,
Apari replied.
One Samdi's end, and the traitor queen powerless.
Startled shouts rose from the ruins, the ambush beginning as the rebels overran the small encampment, and the Dark Rangers circled the perimeter, drawing their bows and finishing any who tried to escape. There were more civilians pouring out of the ruins than Sierra expected. A young male troll draped in furs appeared between a gap in the wall, wedged himself free, and sprinted toward them, orange hair mussed from sleep. Blood splattered across his face and tusks. Sierra donned her helm once more, and drew her crescent glaives. The troll neared their hiding spot off the road, so close that Sierra heard his frantic breathing as he hurled himself away from the carnage. Another one for you, Sierra, Nathanos said, bending down to pick up his pack, preparing to join the others in the ruins. Perhaps allow him one last piss in peace before you strike.
One more soul for the maw.
Sierra's curved blades flashed with ruthless precision, and the troll's head fell to the ground, his look of terror frozen there, his body slumping into the bushes at their feet. While his head still rolled away, Sierra stepped over his corpse, matching Nathanos' easy stride. It was time to claim yet another small victory.
Not much of a prize for your mistress,
Sierra murmured, inspecting the broken pillars and vine-covered walls of Zobal. There were no more screams from within the ruins. All had gone quiet. And then the Widow's Bite trolls began singing, and a fire was lit, the smoke rising high above the fractured columns.
But everything in this accursed jungle is pathetic. Destroying it would feel like a favor.
Nathanos shook his head, pausing outside the entrance to the camp. Bodies littered the ground. They had suffered no casualties on their side, though several Widow's Bite members were being treated for wounds near the building fire. Apari and Tayo went ahead, joining their singing and dancing kin. Every victory we hand her matters, Nathanos told Sierra bluntly, the flames reflected in his eyes, flickering and hot. I claim this one with pride, just as I will claim the necropolis and destroy Bwonsamdi. He will no longer be a threat to Sylvanas. Little stands in her way now, and soon nothing will. Nothing ever stands in her way for long. Nathanos Blightcaller had no use for sleep. The fragile, still-living bodies of the Widow's Bite trolls, however, required it. Even the witch Apari and her faithful bodyguard found a corner to claim and a wall to nestle against. The tarnished badge Nathanos had given Apari to fuel her magic against the shrines glinted around her neck. Many times he considered taking it back from her, either stealthily or with force. But each time he heard the silken whisper of his queen, urging him to let such things go.
Trinkets and trifles,
her voice reminded him.
The impermanent, unimportant relics of life.
His loyalty to Sylvanus did not hinge upon such things, even without a physical reminder of their bond. Nathanos considered it a tangible thing, as real as the stones beneath his feet, and the sludgy water lapping at his boots, and the cricket song filling the swamp. He patted his coat pocket, feeling again the vial there. Now that he had given his badge away, it was the only gift from Sylvanus that remained in his possession. Dark rangers kept the watch, posted at the corners of the ruins, sinking into the shadows with their dark hoods pulled low over their faces. They too had no need to rest, and stood as silent sentinels, as unmoving as the statues carved into the stone pillars of Zobal. To the north, waiting upon its own small island, the necropolis rose, its pronged central tower spearing up toward the blood moon, as if its arms were raised in supplication. He wandered to the edge of the broken bridge that once joined the Zobal ruins to the necropolis and its large open court. They could still pass unimpeded, the water no deeper than his ankles. Still, something kept him from venturing farther across the shattered bridge. Always on the eve of battle he felt restless, but this was something else. He felt the hounds of memory biting at the heels of his mind, something invisible and dangerous pursuing him. It was good that he did not sleep, for he knew it would only invite tormenting nightmares. The winds there howled as if in pain. He had a letter to write, a message for Sylvanus, letting her know of their progress and their impending victory. But something in the stirring mist called to him. An archway yawned open at the center of the necropolis temple, blue flames glowing at its corners like eyes, eyes that saw him and knew him, eyes that sent a chill down his spine. "Hello, Nathanos." A coin splashed into the water near his feet. Nathanos hunched and then crouched, reaching down to fish the sliver of gold out of the muck. He traced his thumb across its face, revealing a familiar etching. "You are not real," Nathanos said, both to the coin and to the voice. But when he stood and turned, he came face to face with his cousin, Stephen Maris. "You died a long time ago." It was like looking into a forgiving mirror. Stephen had always been the more handsome of the two of them, with twinkling hazel eyes and a thick mop of dark hair that turned auburn at the edges. He had lips prone to smirking, dimples curved around his mouth, hiding in his beard. His skin still held the ruddy pink hue of a living man, further proof that this was only a hallucination of some kind. Stephen Maris was long dead, ending as little but a greasy smear on a table, his body the raw materials that built Nathanos anew, and in Stephen's image. My one regret. "Why did you let her do it?" Stephen asked softly. "I was your cousin, Nathanos. I looked up to you. I wanted to be you. But not like that. Not like this." The gold coin in his palm had the weight of the real thing. He sighed and closed his fist around it. When his cousin Stephen was just a young lad, Sylvanus had given him the coin, a gift to fund his first sword. Stephen always wanted to be a paladin and serve the Silver Hand, and had indeed achieved his dream, a dream that was soon ended when he became the clay to shape and rebuild Nathanos. His body had been ripped to shreds by an abomination, and then he had risen as a thrall of the Scourge, a mindless ghoul, until Sylvanus freed him from that fate. The process had left him renewed in undeath, but in a mangled body that grew ever weaker. Sylvanas sought to repair that crumbling form, and used Stefan to do so. "I had no choice," Nathanos replied, unable to meet his cousin's eye. "My bones were falling from their sockets, my sinews torn and useless. I needed a new body." "When you stole my flesh." Nathanos flinched. "Sylvanas made that decision. I could not be made whole without the sacrifice of a family member." Stefan shook his head sadly, regarding Nathanos not with rage or disgust, but pity. "And yet still you serve her, after what she did to me, after what she did to our family. I am the only ghost that moves you, but how many ghosts have you given others? How many men now live tormented by the loved ones you murdered in service to your vicious queen?" Whatever guilt he felt over Stefan's end vanished. Nathanos stared back, suddenly emboldened. "Did you know?" Stefan taunted, his face changing slightly, no longer friendly or handsome, an odd blue light suffusing his skin. "Your queen has made some nasty friends on the other side. The power she has been granted can be taken away. The lords of death will never let her win. Her power is nothing next to theirs. As she is chained to undeath, she is chained to the forces of the Shadowlands." "You know nothing of it," Nathanos spat. "You do not know her as I do." He squeezed his hand, obliterating the coin put there by trickery and magic. Bwonsamdi, of course. Stefan's face dissolved into a hideous, grinning skull, a white bone mask hovering in the place where his cousin had been. "You're in my world now, boy," Bwonsamdi jeered. "This be my game, and we be played it with my rules. Good luck to ya." "You're finished," Nathanos replied, cold. "We be seeing 'bout that." With that, the Loa, or the vision he had sent, vanished into a twist of mocking laughter. Nathanos sneered, returning to the ruins with his hand still tightened into a fist. There was work to be done, a letter to write. He roused the Dark Ranger posted at the ruins' entrance, her red eyes the only part visible in the darkness. "Make yourself ready. I need you to deliver a message. In 1 hour, you depart for Banshee's Wail," Nathanos instructed her. One more precaution, he thought. Like it or not, we are in Bwonsamdi's territory. "Have our mounts at the ready. I refuse to meet my end in this swamp." Chapter 27, Dazar'alor.
"They have taken Zobal, my queen. Blightcaller and his rangers have been sighted moving on the necropolis. What are your orders?"
Perfectly still, Talanji's eyes fixed on the road ahead, the shaded avenue that led through the Zocalo to the old merchant road, and then deep, deep into the green crush of the jungle, taking them over bridges and past waterfalls, down steep hills to the river marsh, to the Zul'Jan ruins. At the end of that path, many miles of marching away, the destiny of her people awaited. Zolani shifted. "My queen?"
"Then there is no more time," Talanji at last replied.
One last push, she told herself. Patch yourself up. Find your last shred of strength. Hold your head high. Let your people see it. March.
"We march on the necropolis."
Alone. It was difficult to find her voice. She had spent a sleepless night kneeling beside Sakan on his cot, listening as Rastarian forces, reserves, and what volunteer militia could be roused arrived to round out their forces. Zakan twisted in his sleep, mumbling of spirits and shadows, his body covered in thick bandages applied by her priests. At some point in the night, she had drifted off, one arm resting on the bed, her head pillowed there, dreaming of the mighty horde battalions that would be waiting outside come morning. But her dream was just that, a dream. Thrall had not returned, and with much pain, Talanji washed and dressed, preparing for battle, schooling her face into an expressionless mask, knowing that when she beheld her forces in the Zocalo, it would be an underwhelming sight. "Is this all?" she had asked Rokan and Zolani. 40 soldiers. Hardly enough to guarantee victory against the sly, skilled rangers of Sylvanas. So few. "Many refused to come," Rokan informed her grimly. "Dawido's bite took hostages, made threats. The Zaralor quakes, afraid of their wrath." "That ends today," Talanji said. She meant it. Either they managed to chase the rangers from their shores and disbanded the Widow's Bite, or the rebels won, and they would bring their chaotic rule to the Great Seal until the Horde came to avenge her. At least, she hoped. Perhaps they would not even do that. "I waited too long. This is the cost of my pride." "We should go now," Zolani advised, "before it grows too hot for marching." "Give the signal," Talanji agreed. It was time to decide their fate. Even though she felt like a walking corpse, it was time. The others had noticed her state, of course, but nobody dared suggest she was too frail to lead. Rokan swung himself up onto his armored raptor, daggers glistening on his belt. He had wrapped leather straps studded with spikes around his great tusks for the occasion. Behind him, the pyramids sparkled in the morning sunlight. Sleepy merchants and nobles beginning their day, oblivious to the gravity of the moment. Rokan blew the war horn, her warriors shouted their response, and the Zandalari army followed her to war. "I will keep my promise to you, Bonsandi, though it may mean the end for us both." They had passed beneath the magnificent golden arch of the Zocalo, when a second, softer war horn blew in the distance. "Did you hear that?" Zolani reined up her raptor, turning it back toward the city. Talanji spurred her own mount, Tizina, down the column of Zandalari soldiers, riding ahead of Zolani and Rokan. She crossed the bridge back into the city, reaching the other side to hear another horn blast, this one closer. The tops of banners crowning the spikes appeared, the ground beneath her shaking rhythmically. From the zigzagging ramps of the Great Seal Pyramid, War Druid Loti, green hair flying behind her, raced towards Talanji. Breathless, she skidded to a stop beside Talanji's raptor, just as the first banners cleared the tops of the stairs, leading up from the bazaar and port below. "The Horde! They just started appearing, Your Majesty!" "I see them, Loti." Talanji didn't bother suppressing her joy. "There's more!" War Druid Loti finally caught her breath. "People are going mad in the markets. They think it's an invasion." Talanji had feared as much. With the storms raging around Zandalar, any travel into the continent would have to be by magical means. Thrall must have used portals to transfer the troops. "Find Lashk. Go with him to the bazaar. Quell whatever fears you find there,
and then join us at the necropolis."
Loti fled without another word. There would be challenging times ahead, Talanji realized, for even if they succeeded in protecting the necropolis, her city had suffered greatly from the widow's bite Madeleine, threatening and spreading false rumors. But first, Bwonsamdi must be protected, and the efforts of Sylvanas and Apari halted. Riding swiftly to meet the vanguard, Talanji encountered Thrall atop an armored grey wolf, red and black horde banners hoisted behind him. First Arcanist Thalysra could be seen riding among the soldiers, radiant in purple and blue, silver feathers shining on her pauldrons, a small host of Nightborn elves, marching in the wake of her mana saber. Her presence explained the portals, and the speed with which the horde had arrived. And last, but certainly welcome, the Tauren chieftain Bane Bloodhoof joined them, accompanied by several shaman in elaborate headdresses, totems the size of tree trunks strapped to their backs. It was, in all, a company of no more than what Talanji herself could muster, but that doubled their odds.
"You came,"
she greeted Thrall, beaming.
"I thought—"
"Forgive the lateness," he replied. He wore a war harness that crisscrossed his chest, and his usual battered leather gauntlets and greaves, an axe held in his right hand. His wolf shook out its great head, whining a little, and Thrall ruffled the fur on its forehead. "Easy, Moonpaw. This is all that could be gathered without leaving Orgrimmar undefended. It put considerable strain on Thalysra to teleport all of us here. Will it be enough?"
Talanji inclined her head respectfully. "It will have to be. It is far more than we had, thank you. Zandalar will not forget this."
Bane lifted the war horn he had brought to his lips and blew twice. The orc warriors, Tauren shaman, and Nightborn archers marched faster, and together, Talanji, Thrall, Bane, and Thalysra gathered to lead the horde forces towards the Zocalo, there to meld with the Zandalari army. "How many cavalry?" Bane asked, immediately to business.
"Only us, Rokan and Zolani. Wardruid Loti will ride to the necropolis when my people have been reassured this is not an invasion," Talanji explained.
Thrall nodded, bobbing in the saddle of his wolf. "Perhaps with our forces divided, we can attack from two sides. Send the cavalry up the center, and try to trap Blightcaller in the middle."
"That will be difficult," Talanji warned him. "The necropolis is surrounded by swamp. The safest approach is from the Zobal ruins which Blightcaller holds."
"That will pose no challenge to our shaman," Bane interjected. "They can pass on top of the water."
"And with some recovery, I can teleport a number of us wherever you desire," Thalysra said in her soft yet direct way. "It will increase the element of surprise." "No surprises here," Talanji told her. "If you reach the necropolis, there is a clear view in every direction."
"Then speed will be our greatest asset," Thrall said. He twisted to regard Thalysra, who looked weary, her shoulders slumped, her hands only loosely gripping the reins of her feline mount. "How long? Could you send some of our warriors ahead?"
Thalysra straightened and quirked her lips to the side. "I shall endeavor to try."
They crossed the bridge beyond the Great Pyramid and west of the terraces, the Zandalari forces visible down the road. Rokan had kept the trolls marching, the colored frills of their feathered helmets dancing with each step. A million thoughts and ideas assaulted Talanji's brain. Thrall's arrival had changed everything. She should have believed. She should have trusted. That her eventual trust in him had brought this boon filled her with hope. Perhaps Bwonsamdi was right. All the broken hearts, spirits, and minds in her kingdom could be mended, if only the proper effort was put forward. Friends and allies made, bonds and promises honored and kept. They had come for her people, in the hour when she needed them most. They had come even after she refused their well-meaning aid, and their ambassador...
Zakan is badly wounded, Talanji blurted. He tried to lead my men and defend one of the lowest shrines. He was caught in a blaze at the tar pits. My healers have seen to him. They say he will live.
He is a strong boy, Thrall replied simply. And if he volunteered to lead, then he understood the risks. Talanji nodded. Still, her thoughts wouldn't quiet down. How would they ever reach the necropolis in time? How could they organize a proper attack when every minute of hesitation might cost them? How could she so much as lift her staff when her body felt so broken? Valisra, how many of us can you safely bring to the necropolis? Bane asked. He rode atop a towering furry beast, a kind of stag with pale horns as impressive as Bane's. They were a motley assortment of folks and animals, and Talanji wondered what they must look like. Strange allies tied by a common cause. And how quickly, he added with a huff.
Why do I get the sense you're annoyed with me, Bloodhoof? Thalisra said with a lilting tease to her voice.
Those pretty feathers of yours will droop in the jungle heat. It is not a short march, he snorted.
Fair point.
The first arcanist uncorked a flask, tucked into a pocket of her elaborate ruined saddle, taking a long swig. Her eyes brightened as if she had taken a drink of pure light.
Give me a moment. I can teleport the entire host.
Thrall banged his fist on the pommel of his saddle, and the grey wolf beneath him gave a long, chilling howl. Then it is settled. We divide into 3 forces, and give them no chance to retreat.
The sea, Talanji frowned. The necropolis lies along our northern border. They could escape by sea. The storms surrounding these lands are under their control. That is why we target their mages first, Thalisra said.
And why Lorthamar and Gazlo are sailing with all speed, Thrall added, eyes fixed on the road to the north. Once the storms break, they will cut off any retreat by sea. Talanji couldn't help but gaze in admiration at each of them. Apparently they had thought of everything. Perhaps that accounted for their delay in coming. Thrall leaned down in his saddle, sending a warrior running ahead to speak with Rokan and stall the Zandalari armies, preparing them for Thalisra's magic to whisk them away.
Then it is settled, Talanji echoed Thrall's words. They will soon know the strength of the Horde.
For Zandalar, Thrall agreed, raising his axe. And for Zakan.
For the safety of my people, Talanji agreed. And for the Horde.
Chapter 28. The Necropolis.
Where is he?
Sierra Moonwarden demanded, stalking in tight circles around the altar, facing the Necropolis temple. Her temper flared as high and red as the blood moon, only then fading into the dawn light.
Why does he not appear?
Nathanos allowed a cooler mood to prevail, studying the scattered carvings and drums on the altar. Perhaps they had missed something. Every shrine of Bwansamdi's had been desecrated. Surely that would be enough to enrage the Loa and inspire him to retaliate. Yet an eerie silence persisted in the necropolis, that whispering, taunting wind still swirling in unnatural configurations, the suggestion of spirits hiding at the corner of his vision. He would not be denied victory, the Banshee's queen's victory, when it seemed so tantalizingly close.
"Ya must know Bwansamdi is a trickster."
Apari slumped toward them, her tick pet pulsating like a boil on her shoulder. She drew her greasy white braid of hair over one shoulder and gestured toward the pit on the other side of the altar. It formed a kind of amphitheater, or court, and it seethed with dark promise. Even Nathanos found its presence unnerving.
"Where is he, witch?"
Sira demanded, impatient.
"I honor our friendship,"
Apari assured her, smiling.
"I honor our bargain." "Ha! We are not friends. Do not waste our time with flattery. We desire only the Loa. How do we summon him?"
Sira crowded the witch, looming, her crimson eyes flashing behind her strange horned helm. Apari did not shrink away, but her bodyguard Tayo bared her teeth. They were filed into hideous points.
"Like this."
Nathanos had assumed Apari sending her rebels into the temple had been only to scavenge for offerings and treasure. Instead, he found them returning in groups, bringing with them bound and squirming hostages. "Supplicants," Nathanos murmured. "Yes, this will do nicely."
"These are Bwansamdi's faithful worshippers,"
Apari explained. The Widow's Bite fanatics had rounded up 6, 2 old troll females, 3 elderly troll males, and a young troll girl no older than 9. The child would go last, and only if Bwansamdi had a mind to resist. "That one first." Nathanos pointed to an older troll male, his hair stark white, his ears drooping from time, and the heavy bone jewelry adorning them. He was the strongest of them, aged but still with all his teeth and both eyes. The other elders appeared 1 footstep from the grave. 2 rebels dressed in the white and black tunic of the Widow's Bite shouldered the old troll forward. He didn't fight. "Good morning, sir."
"Darkness take you," the troll spat.
Nathanos sighed and wiped the spittle from his chin. "I see. In that case, I too shall dispense with pleasantries. There is no need to torture you and kill the child. You are Bwansamdi's faithful, are you not? Prove your belief sufficient. Summon the Loa here, and all of you will live." Over the troll's shoulder, Sira scoffed. Nathanos gave her the tiniest shake of his head. "Don't be stupid. Of course they will not live." "What is your name?" Nathanos asked. The witch, Apari, circled closer, reaching into the medicine satchel around her waist and producing a small pouch. "Tezi." "Very well, Tezi. Let us be reasonable. Help us reach Bwansamdi, and you will all be spared." Tezi sighed and heaved his shoulders, eye to eye with Nathanos. "We worship the Loa of Death, strange one. We come each day to this place. You don't frighten us. Nothing frightens us."
"Do not break, Tezi. They are scum. Bwansamdi will protect us,"
the little girl shouted. One of the rangers slapped her silent. Apari chose that moment to intervene.
"Make your offering, old man, or this goes in the girl's mouth."
She reached inside the pouch and held up a pinch of black powder. Captive, the troll girl gave a yelp.
"Wretchweed and riverbud root. Her insides will be coming out her eyeballs. Is that what you want?
Tezzy drew back. Out of the corner of his eye, Nathanos noticed someone diving toward the witch.
She's just a child.
Tayo clamped her hand around Apari's wrist, the one holding the powder. She twisted and pulled, and the weak, septic Apari had no choice but to let go. Tayo threw the pouch in an arc, sending it splashing into the swamp, lost. At once, Apari struck her across the face. She didn't have much strength left, but the slap left Tayo stunned.
I am on the very precipice of death, Zagota. I will live just to see Bwansamdi and Talanji fall. Nothing, not this girl, nor you, will stop me.
Whatever Zagota meant, Nathanos didn't fancy it was anything friendly. Tayo marched away, back toward the Zobal ruins. Dark Ranger Vizrin moved to follow.
Let her go, Apari muttered. She will come crawling back. She always does.
We have no need of her now, Nathanos drawled. Now where were we? Of course. Tezzy, my new friend. You will cooperate, or the troll girl will be harmed. We have many resources beyond the witch's powders and potions.
Do it!
The girl screamed, unafraid. Nathanos almost admired her spirit. He drew a dagger from his belt. For example, I will take her brash little tongue.
I will do what ya ask, Tezzy growled. But I've no more power over a Loa than a mouse over a snake.
Scamper over to the altar then, mouse, and be quick about it. Nathanos grabbed the troll by the bone talisman around his neck and shoved him roughly toward the drums and relics strewn about the dais. Below, the mist of fog and spirits swirled, and either it was his imagination or the silvery muck had grown thicker. Was this Bwansamdi's wrath? Even a Loa must find it difficult to stomach the mistreatment of mice, such as Tezzy. The old troll dropped to his knees. The girl cried out for him, and Apari cuffed her, subduing her to silent tears. Tezzy picked up one of the ancient drums and began to thump it with the heels of his hands, chanting in a low, haunting rasp, his song rising and falling above the constant buzz of insects filling the marsh. It went on for some time, until Tezzy's voice grew hoarse. Sira paced faster. Nathanos couldn't help but concur. We know you are watching, Bwansamdi, Nathanos called. Nothing. Appear to us, Loa, or your followers will soon be walking your spirit realm. Nothing. The girl, Nathanos sneered. Start with her fingers. Flay them first. Remove them slowly. After that, the ears. The other captured worshippers fell to their knees, joining Tezzy in his chant. But the girl simply trembled, tossing her head from side to side as she sobbed once more. Nathanos took no delight in it. This was simply what was required. The Banshee Queen wanted Bwansamdi gone, and they could not destroy him if he remained forever in hiding. Wait! Sira had come to a halt, peering over the edge of the altar and down into the court. The soup of mist and spirits began to spin, creating a vortex that shot up into the air and dispersed with a ripple, sending the columns of the necropolis shaking, unseen tombs deep in the ground rattling. The skeletons dotting the ruins shook themselves to slivers. Dust rose from the ancient stones under their feet. The blast knocked Nathanos back a few steps, his ears ringing from the force of it. Old Bwansamdi is here, friends. What be all this racket now? The Loa floated high above the court, ankles crossed casually, head cocked to the side. The tall bone harness he wore on his back swayed lightly. The ribs etched into his chest glimmered like stars, streaming blue vapor rising from the slits in his bone mask. His followers gasped, falling flat onto the ground.
"Dark Rangers, at the ready!"
Sira screamed.
At last!
Nathanos sauntered to the edge of the altar, staring up at the larger-than-life Loa. It might have been an intimidating sight, but they had him surrounded, and the loss of his shrines would weaken him considerably. The recessed court simmered with glittering white fog again, spirits of trolls drifting out from their graves to gather around their master. "I have my own army, little dead thing," Bonsamdi chuckled. "And soon my queen will be here. Ya been sneaky so far, can't deny it. But ya won't stand a chance against her armies." "Armies?" Sira whispered, her eyes flying to Nathanos.
"He's bluffing," Nathanos replied calmly. "By the time she arrives, you will be destroyed. Sira, give the command."
"Fire! Widow's Bite! My followers, my friends! No law of death will rule us and corrupt our crown!"
Apari's words were met with 24 war cries. The arrows began to fall, screaming toward Bonsamdi from rangers circling the court.
"Ya be in my world now, my house!"
Bonsamdi thundered, lifting his skeletal hands high. His arms shook, his image flickering like a dying candle, about to sputter out. His spirits massing around him, charged at terrifying speed, rolling out from him like a grisly tide. They swarmed the narrow stairs leading up from the pit, more resistance than Nathanos had anticipated. On the east side of the court, he watched Vizrin and Lelius spring back on agile feet, firing into the mob of spirits, while the Widow's Bite rebels joined in, with slings, bows, and blowguns. Apari let her head drop back on her weak neck, raising shaking arms to the clouds, calling down a surge of lightning that struck the stones between the rangers and the mass of spirits.
"Destroy him!"
Nathanos roared, reaching for his own longbow.
"For Sylvanas!"
Chapter 29, Nazmir. The Horde leadership arrived first, landing outside the Zobal ruins on animals agitated from the unusual journey.
"Whoa there!"
Talanji soothed Xena, stroking the raptor's coarse scales. A single fall from the saddle, and Talanji might be done for.
"Find your feet. There's war to be waged."
At that, the raptor let loose a shrill bellow. Thrall's wolf joined in the call. The first arcanist dismounted from her mana saber, batting away a bothersome cloud of gnats with an elegant hand.
"Go to the ruins. Our armies will follow."
"Will you be all right alone?"
Bane asked from atop his painted and beaded thunderhoof.
"Oh yes, I am quite capable,"
Thalysra nodded. "Go!" As if to punctuate her haste, a crack of lightning rippled down from the sky, hitting somewhere inside the necropolis.
"They are already attacking him!"
Talanji cried, urging Xena to carry her towards Zobal.
"There is no more time!"
Thrall and Bane raced toward the necropolis with her. The ground shook, not from the lightning this time, but from the combined weight of 20 orc warriors, armed and thirsty for a fight, landing in the road. Talanji glanced over her shoulder as they rode, Rokan and her vanguard of Rastari enforcers and civilian militia arriving next. They immediately broke into a run, following the cavalry through the central approach to Zobal, through the ruins and across the shattered bridge leading to the necropolis. Bane's shaman and the orc troops would continue east down the road, then swing north and cross the swampy barrier with their power to walk across the water. Lastly, Thalisra's Nightborn archers would head immediately north toward the necropolis, taking the western approach, teleported into the battle once the first wave of screaming orcs and magic-wielding shaman had ambushed the enemy.
"Stop! You must stop!"
Thrall had almost trampled the troll that popped out from behind a fall of rocks in the open courtyard of Zobal. The orc drew his axe, and Talanji summoned a crackling bolt of death magic to her hands, recognizing the ugly black and white spider design on the troll's tunic. The Widow's Bite. She was thin, but muscular, tall, with leather straps hanging from her shoulders, holstering dozens of poison darts. Her long hair had been slicked up into a tail and streaked with black mud or paint. She put up both hands in surrender and dropped to her knees.
"Give me a good reason not to take your head," Thrall muttered.
"My name is Tayo."
The troll spoke quickly and clearly, without a hint of fear.
"I served the witch Apari."
"Served?" Talanji pressed.
"I can serve her no longer."
The troll, Tayo, sighed.
"She is not the leader I knew, the leader I admired. This cruelty is not her, and I cannot follow this Apari. Her hate for you, Your Majesty, is all she has."
"Then fight with us," Bane encouraged. "Help us stop her."
Tayo stood, slowly, wary of Thrall's sharpened axe.
"I will. All I ask is that you give her a merciful end. Death is already about to claim her. Just make it swift."
"Done,"
Thrall said, and Talanji bit her tongue.
"The bridge is riddled with traps and mines."
Tayo turned and swept her arm back toward the necropolis.
"Too many to count. They knew you might come. Do not go that way."
"That sounds like Blightcaller, all right."
Sheathing his axe, Thrall leapt down from his wolf and produced a few silver orbs from his pack.
"A little gift from our clever trade prince."
"What are those?"
Talanji asked, observing from Tazina's back while Thrall set the orbs down on the ground and twisted each of them. They began to click and whir, then shot out toward the bridge, rolling so fast they became three little blurs.
"Goblin Seeker bots," Thrall replied. "Be ready to charge."
The orbs cracked open halfway across the bridge, each producing 6 tiny contraptions, shaped almost like men, that bounced their way this way and that. A red light on top of each of the bots blinked, frantic. Then the first trap blew. Smoke and chunks of stone exploded, and then another mine was triggered, and another, until they could see nothing but a haze of debris and fire. Thrall stepped back into his stirrup and, without another moment's hesitation, rode toward the chaos. Talanji followed, squinting, Bane ahead of her and to the left. Tayo joined them on foot, bringing up the rear. Talanji had no idea what to expect when they soared through the cover provided by the smoke. On the other side, Bwansamdi towered above the necropolis, gritting his teeth as he raised spirit after spirit and flung them toward his attackers. The rebels were easier to spot, the white flashes on their tunics standing out against the commotion. They had already suffered several losses, troll bodies littering the ground. Nathanos, an armored Dark Ranger, and Apari stood at the altar before the Court of Spirits, Nathanos firing on Bwansamdi, Sira fending off any spirit that came near them with her twin glaives, the witch bringing down the wrath of the storm on the waves of spirits conjured by the Loa. The traps and mines triggering drew their attention, of course, and Nathanos spun to discover Talanji, Thrall, Bane, and Tayo approaching from the Dreadmire.
Nathanos Blightcaller and Sira Moonwarden, she heard Bane rumble. I do not recognize the troll.
That is an old friend, Talanji told him. But she must fall with the rest. Ha! The ranger, Sira Moonwarden, shouted toward them. Is this all you can muster? Pathetic!
Do not let them reach the Loa, Nathanos commanded. He left them behind, disappearing behind the band of white and black-clad rebels that rushed them. Sira put her head down, weapons flared to her sides as she led the defense. Do not underestimate her, Thrall warned. Wardens are formidable. Thrall swung his axe in wide arcs, sweeping aside the trolls that threatened to overwhelm them. It was good, Talanji decided, that the enemy assumed it was just the Four coming to protect Bwonsamdi. It was not good, however, that they might be overrun and killed before the reinforcements ever showed. Where are they? She looked in desperation to the east, expecting to see the shaman and orcs sweeping toward them at any moment. Was the swamp booby-trapped too? What delayed them? While they had not yet shown, her army had. The Zandalari came pelting out of the lingering smoke on the bridge, spears raised, feathers and golden armor a bolstering sight. The Zandalari, Thrall and Bane took on the brunt of the rebels, Talanji supporting them with her death magic and glistening barriers that warded off any incoming arrows from the Dark Rangers. The glittering streams firing from Talanji's staff left behind trails of shadow, the power of Bwonsamdi's necropolis imbuing her magic with darkness. Half of the red-eyed Forsaken elves had turned their sights on them, while the others continued to assault Bwonsamdi. The Loa. Her Loa. Though the necropolis empowered him, the spirits he summoned to his side came with less and less frequency. Could he hold just a little longer? And where were those damn orcs? A blinding spear of lightning struck the barrier she had conjured around Bane, shattering her train of thought. The shield faltered, but she quickly refocused, finding a reserve of energy she had not anticipated. And then she saw the very source of the storm, Apari. She waded slowly through the throng of rebels, trying and failing to knock Thrall and Bane from their mounts. Sira danced in and out, parrying thrusts from Thrall's axe but never landing a blow herself. The chaos worked against her, bodies blocking a direct line to the orc. When fighting, Thrall and Bane proved fruitless. She turned her attention to the Zandalari soldiers, picking them off. Talanji did not flinch away from Apari's searing gaze. It was the troll Tayo described. Apari looked more corpse than living being, her skin grayish, her hair soaked in sweat. Talanji couldn't help but sympathize. Every inch of her was similarly aching and weak. They had once been like sisters, but now Apari limped toward them with a discolored leg, bloated with infection. She reached up and removed the gruesome bone mass covering her face, tossing it aside. This was a distraction, Talanji knew it, but she could not let Apari continue to call down lightning while they fought. Not when Bwonsamdi was already so vulnerable. A small white shape zipped toward them, flying from somewhere over Apari's shoulder. It smacked into Talanji's face, but didn't move, suctioned to her skin. She tried to scream, but the creature attached to her muffled the sound. Talanji flailed, her barrier sputtering out. Tazina tossed and Talanji lost her balance, tumbling to the ground. Blood slicked the stones. She slipped trying to right herself, but the fall had dislodged the creature from her face. It bounced away, a disgusting dread tick. Bane had noticed her fall and smashed his totem down on the tick, splattering it. There was no time to thank him. Talanji crawled to her knees and stood, pushed this way and that by the dizzying throng of rebels, all trying to bring down Bane. The widow's bite fell like a tide against Bane and Thrall. but each time they were driven back, with a few left alive and standing. The sky opened up once more, and Talanji saw the flicker of lightning there in the clouds. Just a suggestion, before it came at her fully formed, snaking and hot. She heard Apari's cry of triumph, saw her old friend laughing as she brought down the storm on the queen's head. No! Talanji threw her arms wide, the glossy magic barrier deflecting the lightning strike just as the hair in her head began to bend toward it. Her spell did more than just protect her. The ricochet arced across the battlefield, punching Apari in the chest. Her screams ended, the blow shooting her back against a column decorated with skulls. "Go!" Bane thundered. "End it!"
Here!
Tayo held out her hand, and Talanji did not hesitate to take it.
We can give her mercy together.
Did she deserve it? They forced their way through the rebels, Tayo knocking them aside with her gauntlet. Apari had tried to poison her, assaulted the palace, kidnapped innocents, sacrificed Zandalari citizens, all in the name of revenge. I should have helped her when the Alliance attacked. I didn't help her then, but I can now. Apari sat with her legs splayed out in front of her, a drip of blood speeding down her cheek. The impact of her skull had fractured the stone column. What was left of her childhood friend was unpleasant to look at, but Talanji knelt beside her, cradled her neck, and tried to smile.
I'm sorry, Apari, Talanji murmured. The siege. My father was dying. I wanted to help him, but I should have stayed to help you too. Ya can rest now. It's all over, Tayo added, producing a small dagger. It's not over, Apari whispered, her words mingled with bubbles of blood. Not over. You should die for what you did to me, to my mother. You should die, and Bwonsandi, and Proudmoore.
Talanji flinched. Of course Apari would hate her too. Jaina Proudmoore had been the face of the assault on Dazara Lore, the Alliance leader that had sacked the palace and murdered the king.
Vengeance will only take you so far,
Talanji told her gently, wiping the matted hair from her face.
You need more than that to survive. I did not help you then, my friend, but I will help you now.
Talanji held Apari's hands and looked into her sad, terrified eyes. Though she trembled, though her spirit felt threadbare, she conjured a soothing spell for Apari, hoping it might ease a little of her fear and pain. Life had not been kind to the girl, to either of them, but when Apari was gone, her body would nourish the earth, and Bwonsandi would keep her spirit from the maw. Ironic that she wanted the Loa dead, when he was the one who would now save her from everlasting darkness. Talanji squeezed her old friend's hands. Tayo drew the blade. Tayo did not stay to mourn after it was done. She hurled herself back into the fray, and Talanji followed, her heart a little heavier than it had been before. Thrall and Bane stood victorious, the rebel line broken and scattered. Those who survived fled, most simply tossing themselves into the swamp to swim away. Sira Moonwarden, however, did not retreat. She whirled at them like a hurricane, flashing her blades almost impossibly swift, dancing in and out of range, slashing at Thrall, then leaping back, twirling, avoiding the heavy, slow swing of Bane's totem.
Nathanos,
Talanji heard the Dark Warden call.
The Rangers! Send them to me!
He did not hear her. In fact, he had pushed deeper into the necropolis, vanishing into the swirling mists at Bwonsandi's feet. Some of the Rangers, however, heard her, and Talanji hurried to protect her allies, while a hail of deadly arrows fell. A war horn echoed through the haze rising off the Dreadmire. Talanji was beginning to love that sound. The ground quaked to the east, orc raiders and Tauren shaman colliding with a small detachment of dark rangers, firing on Bonsandi from the far side of the Court of Spirits. The rangers spun, trying too late to repel the onslaught of axes and cascades of lightning. They fell, swift, but not swift enough. Sira Moonwarden fought harder, enraged at the passing of her kin. She slid to her knees, gliding across the thin lake of rebel blood, a nearly invisible strike opening a gash on Bane's right forearm. The Tauren tossed his great mane and horns, whirling, his pain or his fury granting him the necessary speed. At last Sira took a hit, as the flat end of Bane's totem, still covered in mashed bits of Apari's dreadtick, caught her in the stomach. At the sight of their lieutenants spinning to the ground, the Dark Rangers gathered near the altar, dispersed, retreating to the concealing fog of spirits in the court. They liked their odds there better, firing indiscriminately into the silvery morass. What little remained of the Zandalari forces circled Sira, trapping her. Miraculously, the Dark Warden climbed to her feet, battered but unwilling to surrender. She readied her blades, just in time for First Arcanist Thalyssra to arrive with her Nightborn archers. Sira paused, red eyes aglow with the outrage of defeat. "Put down your weapons," Thalyssra warned, brandishing her crystal staff, "or my archers will pin you where you stand." "Never!" Sira bellowed. While she twirled her glaives and glared at Thalyssra, Thrall slowly made her way around the Zandalari troops to encircle her. He gave the First Arcanist a subtle flick of the head, and Thalyssra whistled, her archers forming ranks and marching quickly toward the Court of Spirits. "Do not look at me with those gloating eyes!" Sira shouted, poking her glaive toward the Nightborn. "Nathanos! Nathanos! No! No, I will not be abandoned again! Not now! My goddess! No, I will not submit! You have accomplished nothing! Do you hear me? Nothing!" The blunt end of Thrall's axe cracked into her helmet, silencing her. Sira crumpled to the ground, her glaives clattering to the stones, her helmet slipping off her head and rolling away. Thrall broke through the crowd of Zandalari and stopped the helm with the toe of his boot. "Bind her tightly," he told the trolls. "I know exactly what to do with her." An unnatural cackle rippled out from the center of the necropolis. Bonsandi! Talanji raced to the edge of the court, the Loa beside himself with amusement, as Blightcollar's rangers fell, one by one, overrun by the orcs, or fried by shaman lightning. Some slumped against the wall, prickly with Nightborn arrows. At the center of it all, still stubbornly brandishing his bow, Nathanos Blightcollar raged against Bonsandi. "I told ya, dead man, you're no match for my queen." Talanji nodded, grabbing her left shoulder as she circled the stone court, and took the stairs down, going to join her Loa. It felt like her heart had gone numb as she clutched it, her last reserve of strength long gone. She dragged herself along, unwilling to let Bonsandi face Blightcollar alone. They were connected, blood and fate twining them together, and if this was to be their victory or their end, she would spend it in the thick of battle. He was utterly outnumbered, alone, the bodies of his defeated comrades surrounding him like a grim barricade of cold flesh. Talanji could get no closer to him, but that did not matter. She sank to her knees, closing her eyes, raising her hands and breathing in the cool, prickling mist that swirled at the bottom of the court. Aloa's power came from his believers, and though Talanji had no strength left to give, she had her words. She had her belief. "Mighty Bonsandi, Loa of Graves, your strength is mine, my strength
is yours.
Her voice grew louder, unnaturally so, echoing across the necropolis with the thunder of a god's. Bwonsamdi spoke through her, and she felt ice swirl around her, bracing her against the weakness that threatened to make her crumble.
Ya enemies have fallen before ya. The reward for doubting ya is death.
Either she laughed or Bwonsamdi did. A sound like chattering teeth, like knuckle bones clattering. Nathanos was not foolish enough to fight on. He simply glared up at the Loa, his hands and coat spattered with blood, his hair uncharacteristically mussed. His plans had failed.
I will swing the axe.
Talanji's voice boomed across the necropolis again, emerging as if from the massive Loa hovering above her.
For what he has done to my people.
Many will wish to see his demise, Bane called down to her from the edge of the court, a hand clamped over his bleeding arm. The combined forces of the Horde inched toward Blightcaller, hemming him in, his last free moments spent in speechless fury. Unlike Sira, he gave them nothing. No taunt, no mockery. He simply shouldered his bow, pulled a vial from his coat, uncorked it, and bowed his head. At last he spoke, strange coils of black smoke seeping out from between his fingers, where he clasped the vial. "My queen," he said, clearly enough for all to hear. "My lady!" It was no blast of lightning that struck him, but a liquid tendril of purple and black that emerged from the sky, enveloping him and twisting around him, swallowing him whole. "No!" she heard Thrall shout. "No!" The orc chieftain raced for the steps, axe at the ready. But it was too late. The tendril recoiled back into the sky, leaving behind nothing but a few wisps of shadow where Blightcaller had been. "That magic," Bane growled. Talanji had covered her mouth with both hands, frozen, still on her knees in the mist. Nathanos was gone. But how? She stood, feeling at last like some of her vigor was returning. "Sylvanas used something similar at the Mak'gora. Ancestors watch over us. Her power is growing."
"Ah, the dead one slipped away."
Bwonsamdi seemed unconcerned, shrugging.
"Ye be tricksy indeed, just like your old friend Bwonsamdi. I, however, plan to live a lot longer than him."
Talanji watched as the Horde warriors, shaman and archers, realized gradually that they had won. The skies had cleared over the horizon, the storm abated, Sira Moonwardens squirmed on the ground, captured. The wounded were gathered, the dead having found their end in a place already thick with graves. Talanji drifted away from the worst of the carnage, climbing the stairs to her left, and joining her allies again.
"Don't look so sad,"
Bwonsamdi chided, wagging his finger at Thrall.
"Ya came for me, and here I am. Whatever the Banshee Queen had planned here tonight, ya stopped her."
He's right. First Arcanist Thalyssra strode down the stairs to join the crowd forming in the Court of Spirits.
"The Horde stood together as one behind our ally."
Talanji took Bane's offered arm, the uninjured one, and went to gather with Thrall and the others.
"Not just an ally,"
she said as they amassed, friends finding each other and clasping hands, warriors standing with mingled disbelief and pride.
"I wish to take my place on the Horde Council. It is where I belong, speaking for my people and listening for them,"
Talanji stated, to a resounding war cry.
"Our armies must be rebuilt, our city secured, and the trust of the people won. but we will emerge stronger than ever.
It would be our honor. Bane Bloodhoof bowed his head. Thrall had recovered from the disappointment of losing Nathanos, and added his solemn nod to the chorus.
Oh, very touching.
Bonsandi pretended to wipe a tear from his eye, but Talanji saw the undeniable gleam of mischief in his bright blue eyes. Not just mischief, but relief.
Now,
Talanji turned back toward the south, where beyond the swamps, jungles, and mountains of Nazmir, the golden city Dazar Alor waited.
I believe I owe you a feast. No assassins this time,
she smiled.
You have my word.
Chapter 30, Stormwind. Matthias Shaw had never sailed a Zandalari ship, but he learned damn quick. He had never been so happy to be back on the sea, and that was saying something. But what he had learned, and what he brought, was needed urgently in Stormwind. He watched with a full stomach and fuller heart as Stormwind City rose up from the horizon, a white beacon, a more than welcome sight. The Horde leadership had let him go, no strings attached, introducing him to a crew of merchants willing to smuggle him quickly to familiar soil. His initial reaction was one of suspicion. A spy master never accepted anything at face value. He searched the ship, the hold, and his bags for traps, explosives, and anything strange. To his everlasting surprise, they had kept their word. As something of an apology, or perhaps thanks, Queen Talanji had filled the ship with food fresh from their celebratory feast. Matthias was hungry enough to eagerly get a taste for the spiced meat heaped as tall as a man in the hold. Prisoners didn't exactly get the finest cuts. In fact, he didn't want to know what parts of the animals he had been eating. Maybe that was the real punishment. "Do you have papers?" Matthias asked the captain, Hafken, a sour-faced Vrykul with shockingly red hair. "Papers?" Hafken snorted. "I have you." The spymaster grinned. Fair enough. Speaking of fair, the seas proved mercilessly smooth, no trace of the magical storms darkening the way home. They sailed into Stormwind Harbor 4 days later, with the feast food dwindling as steadily as Shaw's patience. He kept dawdling in the brig, checking every hour or so to make sure their prize was still there. It was. Another unexpected and generous gift from the Horde. The only catch outlined to him by the tremendously tall orc warrior Thrall was this. The prize must be delivered exactly as he instructed, to exactly whom he instructed, with the note he had entrusted to Shaw unopened. Thrall was not the sort one quarreled with in person. Shaw agreed to all stipulations. He could hardly refuse, given his circumstances, and boarded the craft sailing east. A bevy of fluffy white seagulls saw them home, gliding on the winds alongside the ship. Matthias propped one foot on the railing, hand looped through a sail rope. A welcome party standing at the end of the dock, flanked by 6 keep guards. Jaina Proudmoore, Flynn Fairwind, looking a bit worse for wear, and King Anduin Rin were there to greet his return. The ship bumped gently into the dock, rocking, and Matthias gave his king a long, grateful bow. It was good to be home. "Did they mistreat you?" Anduin asked, brow drawn with worry. "They had bigger problems." Matthias did not disembark, but instead gestured for the others to board. "I can tell you about that later. There is something you need to see." Anduin smirked. Then Flynn Fairwind all but shoved the king out of the way, throwing himself at Matthias and wrapping him in a tight, warm hug. Matthias returned it, a greeting he had not expected, but welcomed all the same. He smelled like whiskey and salt and soap. Familiar. like a dream remembered long after it occurred, like a word that was on the tip of the tongue for an age, and now captured. I sailed like a madman. Flynn pushed his sunburnt cheeks deeper into Shaw's shoulder. He felt slight in Shaw's arms, as if he had lost weight. The crazy pirate had nearly killed himself sailing for help, and all for him. While Shaw had been rotting in that Zandalari cell, mourning his chance at peace and rest, Fairwind had gone and rescued that shining little chance. Shaw didn't forget things like that, didn't take them lightly. Never sailed like that before, but I had to get you back.
And here I am, Matthias murmured.
Here you are.
Flynn, Shaw started, clearing his throat. There's something I'd like to talk to you about. Meet me at the Gilded Rose tonight, will you?
Slowly releasing Flynn from their embrace, Shaw pressed the perfect blade of grass into the pirate's hand.
Don't be late.
Flynn's expression didn't seem to register what to do with the grass, but the flush in his cheek said all that Shaw needed to know. What is so urgent? Anduin interjected, striding onto the boat.
It is better if I simply show you. Come.
Matthias led them below, shooing the crew out of the hold, making certain they were all of them alone before opening the brig. The small, low-ceilinged cabin holding the brig was lit only by 2 meager candles, hardly enough light to see by. The door banged open, a figure slumped in the shadows, bound. Jaina Proudmoore squinted, leaning forward and opening a gout of flame with her hand, the glow of the fire landing on the battered, gagged face of Sira Moonwarden.
Sira?
Jaina whispered. Her eyes flew to his.
The Horde gave her to you?
No strings attached,
Matthias told her. Anduin gently moved Jaina aside, squaring himself before the prisoner. She could have burned him alive with the hatred in her eyes. There are always strings, Anduin said, even if you cannot see them.
Thrall wanted her delivered to Tyrande Whisperwind and Malfurion Stormrage along with this letter.
Matthias drew the sealed missive from his coat and handed it to the king. Anduin blinked with confusion. That is oddly generous of him.
I agree,
Matthias replied. It will be done. Anduin tucked the message under one arm, returning his attention to Sira. But first I will have a word with the prisoner. Remove her gag. Something had changed in her at the mention of Tyrande and Malfurion. The rage in her eyes did not ebb, but there was something more there. Fear, perhaps, or anticipation. Where is she? Anduin wasted no time. Where is Sylvanas Windrunner? Sira Moonwarden rolled her eyes and glanced away.
Nowhere you will find her. Even if you did, it is far, far too late. You have lost.
My spies tell me the opposite is true, the king told her. They say you were not successful in destroying Bwonsandi, that your Dark Ranger forces were annihilated, and Nathanos Blightcaller escaped only because your mistress intervened. She said nothing, but her lip curled at the mention of his name. Do you know how many deaths you have caused? How much misery you have brought upon my kingdom? Anduin crouched, crowding her. Do you know? Do you care? Sira smiled. Smile all you like, creature. There is little hope for you now. Your people will want to speak with you, want to understand how you could serve Sylvanas. You realize this, yes? The Dark Warden considered that for a moment, Jaina's magic flame dancing across her pale, pale face.
I know it, yes. And I feel nothing. I will give them nothing. Once more you waste the little time you have left.
Anduin made a soft sound of disgust and stood, hovering over her, considering her for a long and tense spell. A wisp of purple energy traveled down his arm, gathering in his palm. It happened in a blink, coming and going, dissipating before Matthias could see for certain what the king had done. It startled Anduin enough to make him stumble backward. Shaw felt Jaina's eyes upon him, and he glanced her way. If he was rattled before, the fear etched upon Jaina's brow shook him to the core. Anduin winced, breathing hard, shaking out his hand before leaning back against the wall. Shaw knew better than to be staring when the king's eyes began to roam their faces for a reaction. Sierra threw back her head and laughed herself hoarse.
"Tell me,"
she mocked in a sing-song voice,
"how does it feel to know you have lost? For time will prove it so. Ah, well, take heart, falling lion. You will serve well. You will serve well."
Chapter 31, Stormwind. "She is through there. Nobody will disturb you." Tyrande Whisperwind alighted the portal on silent feet, plunged at once into the damp, unforgiving cold of the Stormwind stockades. She glanced to her left at the Kaldorei mage, who had offered to give her a portal from Nordosil to the Eastern Kingdoms. Anduin's message of invitation had arrived, along with a sealed note from Thrall. "Come with all haste to Stormwind," Anduin wrote. "I have in my possession a gift from the Horde. It is meant only for you and awaits you in the stockades." Intrigued, Tyrande came that same day, whisked magically from the World Tree and all its quiet beauty to the dank drip, drip, drip of Stormwind's dungeons, home to the very dross and dregs of Azeroth. Tyrande did not pinch her nose shut, but breathed in the stench. To her left, Chandra's Feathermoon appeared, and to her right, Maiev Shadowsong. They had insisted on coming along, perhaps sensing that Tyrande should not be left alone. The mage departed, leaving them completely alone in the outer corridor of the western wing of the stockades. It was a place rich in painful memories, redolent with sorrow, as if the years of wasted life locked in those cages had glazed the stones, hope turning to despair, despair leaking from every crack and crevice in the walls. One could contemplate it later. Tyrande ducked through the short, human-sized arch and into the inner room of the cell, opening the iron-barred door, its lock mysteriously malfunctioning. "My thanks at least for that, Lion's son." Maiev and Chandris followed wordlessly. She couldn't decide yet if their presence rankled or soothed her. The winding, hollow halls of the prison seemed engineered to send the cries of lonely prisoners from one wing to the other. Tyrande shivered, reminded of a different sort of howl and fury, the screams of the burning carried on hot, ashen winds. The prisoner raised her head at the squeak of the iron door. Sierra Moonwarden's crimson eyes flared fire-bright in the gloom. No such brightness came from Tyrande's eyes, though if the blackened pits there could twinkle and dance, they would. Her prize, Thrall's gift. "This is not what was owed," he wrote, "but I hope it is a start."
"A start," Tyrande murmured.
"You,
Sierra." "Security measures in Stormwind seem somewhat lax of late."
Sierra glanced toward the wide-open cell door, then back to the 3 night elves who had come. Her armor had been stripped from her, leaving her in a threadbare linen shift and rough-spun trousers. Her cheeks were sunken, the undead pallor of her skin uglier than Tyrande remembered.
I am the Night Warrior,
Tyrande told her.
No way is shut to me. No?
Sira balled her hands into fists.
No way. Is that so? What about the way of compassion, of loyalty?
Tyrande observed as her terror transformed into anger, then boiled into rage.
Are you finished?
No, Sira snapped.
Wait. I am. I suppose I am finished. You have come here to kill me, is that it?
She snorted, laughed, mad perhaps, beside herself, snot running freely down her lips and chin.
Elune abandoned me. You abandoned me, my sister warriors, and you did nothing to save me.
That seemed to stir a more raw, more recent memory. She pressed her knuckles into her eyes.
I have nothing left to fear.
Tyrande took a single step toward her.
You have me. Fear you?
Sira's hands dropped away, bluish marks blossoming over her eyes where her knuckles had dug in.
Do not be ridiculous. You, with all the rage of the Dark Moon, you have done nothing to avenge your people. You are wind, Tyrande. Impotent, worthless, cowardly wind. I wish I could have done more to protect you, Tyrande said, cold. But some natures prove too evil to curb, too ambitious to abide. Sylvanas has such a nature, and I will not forget that. You are her servant now, Sira. I have not forgotten that either.
She drew the long, curved sword at her side, letting Sira see it plainly.
Tyrande?
Chandra's sword was gentle as silk, as if Tyrande might startle and do something they would all regret.
Think. Look. I see a sad and defeated thing that has chosen a path, Tyrande replied. Nothing more.
I chose nothing, Sira shrieked, and Maiev stepped forward, so close her shoulder brushed Tyrande's.
I did not choose to return. I would never choose to return. Everything inside of me is ugliness and rage, and the only thing that quiets the scream is death. For what was done to me, I will see 100-fold done upon this cursed realm.
Maiev's hand fell on Tyrande's forearm, but the Night Warrior shrugged it off. Her wrist twitched. The blade shimmered.
I knew you once to find a fawn with 2 snapped legs, Maiev whispered. A fawn everyone, even I, claimed was beyond healing, beyond help. Many offered to end its suffering. You saw inside of it a spark of life, a hidden light. It died, Tyrande murmured, squinting down at Sira. I could not save it. How long did you try? Maiev asked. And would you try again? If you continue down this path, Tyrande, you will find yourself no better than Sira. She is in pain. Can you not see it? She is in agony. The only relief comes from spilling blood. Is this what you want? To find your only comfort in the suffering of others?
And so I should do nothing? Tyrande seethed.
That is not what I suggest, and you know it. Listen, Tyrande.
Maiev went to stand beside Sira, a warden she had considered more than a friend, a sister.
I have lived as one consumed, and though there is no great love between us, Tyrande, I would not see you become what I was, what Sira is now. You are more than just rage and vengeance. You are more than simply the Night Warrior. You are a priestess and a leader. Can you not, as a priestess, take pity on this creature?
Tyrande raised the blade again, considering it. The corrupted, undead warden flattened herself against the wall, then hissed.
You will not,
Sira spat.
You lack the...
A single strike, swift and true, cut an opening in Sira's neck. But shallow, no deeper than the width of a fingernail. There would be no blood, for she had none to shed. Sira grabbed for her neck, sure it was the blow of death. Tyrande raised the weapon again, a shudder passing through her body. She had thought to feel nothing, to know nothing, but perfect rage. She was the Night Warrior, revenge made flesh, but now with that one shallow cut, she felt suddenly, horribly alive again. "Mercy," Chandris murmured, taking the blade easily from Tyrande's hand. "Mercy for that little hidden light." "Mercy," Maiev added, "for a sad, defeated thing." Tyrande simply nodded. No longer armed, Chandris and Maiev had more things to ask, but the Night Warrior was finished. She had seen what she needed to see. Turning to go, she paused at the door, opening and closing her fist around the blade that was no longer there. "Alas, Sira, I do possess the courage," she said. "And that is what frightens me. That is what should frighten us all." Chapter 32, Dazara Lore. After that meal, I am tempted to linger and see what golden delights your city holds, Thalysra preened, spreading her arms wide and ripping a tear in the world before their eyes, magic crackling from its center in hypnotic blue torrents. The first arcanist summoned her portal and stepped aside, ushering her archers through. The port of Zandalar was busier than ever, with the skies cleared, the lanes for commerce by sea safe once more. Bonsandi shrines were already being rebuilt, and word of his heroic stand in the necropolis had spread, bringing more supplicants and pilgrims to his place of power and worship. He was not yet at his full strength, but Talanji knew it would only be a matter of time. For her part, she felt whole once more. Nearly. The wounds left behind by Jaina's assault on the city still throbbed, and one day, Talanji knew the Proudmoore witch would have to answer for her crimes. But patience would win that war, she thought, and any wars that came before that would be fought in the company of her new allies. "Thank you for your hospitality, my dear." Thalysra took Talanji's hand, just by the tippy-tips of her fingers, and gave it a shake. "Do vow to visit us in Orgrimmar soon. There is much the council will wish to discuss with you, and much I wish to show you. All that can endear a woman of your taste to an acquired taste of a city. You may trust that I know all the best places." Talanji bowed her head respectfully. "You saved my city, First Arcanist. I will never forget your feats of magic, and I promise to visit soon." "Excellent." She stepped aside, waiting for the others to say their goodbyes. A bandaged but very much alive Zakan hobbled toward her, supported on one side by Thrall. While the orc had spoken in glowing terms of their victory at the feast, Talanji sensed within him a private sorrow. Losing Nathanos Blightcaller clearly angered him, but he was doing his best to conceal it. "Brave, honorable ambassador," Talanji beamed at Zakan. "How do I thank you for your sacrifice?" "With a kiss?" He chuckled and winced. "On second thought, no. I'm crispy all over. It was my pleasure to serve your majesty. I hope we meet again soon." "You packed your salves, yes? And your special poultices? Say you have. Do not make a queen fuss so in public." She sighed and frowned at his many, many bandages. "I must see to my people here. We must heal and learn to trust one another again. When Zandalar is strong,
You will see me in Orgrimmar, Zakan, and I will be bringing my royal physicians, just in case you try any more heroics.
Thrall clasped her hand around the wrist, a sign of a warrior's approval. The Horde is united, and our purpose is clear. When you feel ready, join us in the hunt. The hunt? Sylvanas Windrunner remained at large. It seemed like an impossible task to search the entirety of Azeroth, and Talanji already felt weary of the scope of it. She felt weary, too, of fighting so hard for the soul and safety of her people, but she had made a promise. She had joined the Horde. They would need her now, just as she needed them.
Oh, and I hope you do not mind taking one more with you.
Talanji spun, searching the endless crowd behind her for a specific face. She saw her there, Tayo, her hair shining long and ebony, no longer caked in mud. The glittering, enameled garb of the Zandalari fit her well, though she insisted on wearing her same old bone jewelry and bandoliers of poison darts.
Tayo wishes to act as my ambassador, Talanji told them. She will be my eyes and ears, serving me as Zakan served you.
The troll smiled boldly, endearingly unafraid. Without her, we would have been torn to pieces by Blightcaller's traps, Thrall chuckled. She is welcome among us.
I'm Zakan.
The troll tried to hold himself up under all the stiff bandages.
I promise I'm pretty handsome under here. Or I will be when all my hair grows back.
They joined the long line of warriors leaving Zandalar through the Nightborn's portal. Talanji was surprised to find herself sad. The city would be much emptier without them, but a queen's work was never done. With 2 Restarian forces to protect her, Talanji began the lengthy journey back to the Great Seal. She would take it on foot, among her people once more. As they approached the stairs leading out of the port, a young troll girl skipped toward her, angling past her guards. The enforcers made to stop her, but Talanji shook her head.
Let her pass, she said, kneeling.
The girl pressed a squashed purple flower into her hand.
For you. That is a great kindness, thank you, Talanji said. I do not know if I am worthy of your gift, but I will endeavor to be so. Mada says you not worthy, that you will make us worship Bonsamdi.
The girl frowned, clasping her hands behind her back and swinging them.
Please do not make us worship him. I like Gonk. Of course you do.
Talanji touched the girl lightly on the chin.
He is the lord of the pack. What is not to love? You should give him many offerings and sing chants to him every day. We need all of our Loa, small one, for our soldiers to grow big and strong, for our fields and seas to flourish, for the health of the Zandalari people. And Bonsamdi is not so bad. He helped us fight off the rebels, and he protects our souls, keeps us safe when it is time for us to depart this place. Then Mada is wrong?
The girl scrunched up her nose.
She is right to worry, but tell her that all Loa will be whispering in my ear, that all will advise me, Talanji told her seriously. That is my promise to her and to you. Okay.
The child squealed with delight and disappeared back into the crowd. By the time Talanji had taken all the questions brought to her in the port and then the bazaar and found her way back to the palace, the sky had darkened, turning indigo and teal, the sun as lovely and lush as an orange. She watched a servant hum to herself as she pulled down a garland of flowers in the corridor outside the council chambers. Songs and the low thump of drums echoed through the halls. Talanji removed her crown upon reaching her chambers, setting it gently in the velvet-lined case in her wardrobe. When she turned around to find her basin and splash her face with water, Bonsamdi startled her, hovering in the purple dusk glow bathing her balcony.
Big words you said to that little girl in the market today.
Words you do not agree with?
Talanji crossed her arms. The Loa shrugged and tapped his cheek thoughtfully.
We had a deal. Ya protect me, our bond is broken, the pact undone. I keep my promises, girl.
With that, Bwansamdi drifted back from her, scooping up handfuls of air that gradually became tinged blue and then black. Wisps of energy curled around his forearms, then gathered before him a vortex that gradually took shape. The ghostly image of a knife. The room grew unbearably cold, whispers circling the knife, unknowable and foreboding.
Come forward, he told her. The knife will sever our bond.
Something almost tempted her to take the knife, but then she shied away, retreating to her bed, staring at him from there, a smile building on her lips.
I've thought about it,
Talanji said, removing her sandals and rubbing her aching feet.
What I said to that girl is true. You must relinquish some of your say in matters, Bwansamdi. There will be no crown for you to protect if things continue this way. You are still the Loa of kings, but Gonk, Paku, Akunda, all of the Loa, they are crucial to our survival.
At that, his smile widened.
Might be I'm not the foremost expert on crops and the like. 'Tis a fair deal, unless there's a trick here I not be seeing.
Talanji blew out a labored breath.
No more tricks, Bwansamdi. I've had my fill.
Then?
He gestured to the ghostly knife.
We can make each other stronger, Bwansamdi. I am not foolish enough to think this will be the last of my troubles, or the last time our kingdom is threatened. I want power. I want it on my terms this time.
I still be the Loa of kings?
He flashed her a ridiculous smile. The knife obliterated, the room suddenly warm again.
Ya still be the Loa of kings, Bwansamdi?
Then I suppose our bargain is amended, eh?
The Loa bowed, and when he lifted his head again, his blue flame eyes had darkened.
But I warn ya, Talanji, do not gloat. This battle is won, but not the war. A time will come when ya will be tested, and that time is coming soon.
She shuddered, hugging herself again.
I do not like it when you talk that way. It frightens me.
Good.
Bwansamdi passed a shaking hand over his mask.
It should. I have one more thing to say before I go.
Talanji groaned.
I am exhausted, Bwansamdi. Little more than walking bones.
Ya will like this, trust me.
The Loa winked, stepping aside to reveal a familiar silhouette standing behind him on the balcony. He glittered like silver in the falling light, his eyes glossy with tears, even appearing as he did then, as a spirit.
Talanji, my girl.
King Rastakhan opened his arms to her, and Talanji gasped. Warrior or queen, she felt no shame in rushing to her father, in letting him see just how much his presence meant to her. She wrapped her arms around nothing, his spirit chilling her skin as she tried to pull him into an embrace.
Dry your eyes, my daughter, he chided, wiping a ghostly finger across her cheek.
You first.
You have grown wiser and stronger, just as I knew ya would,
Rastakhan told her, craning back to look her up and down.
I am proud of the queen you have become.
I made so many mistakes, father. I do not know if the people of this nation will ever trust me again.
Talanji shook her head, but her father laughed gently and hushed her. His spirit wavered, as if the thought of being away from her was too much to bear. The light in him nearly went out, a darkness like a passing cloud casting him in shadow.
"What is happening?"
Talanji demanded.
"Ponsandi!"
Rastakhan's image strengthened again, and he clutched his chest. "Something unnatural. I feel oblivion is near."
"Say what you must, and quickly," the Loa warned. "The other side be too unpredictable these days."
Rastakhan nodded, his hand hovering comfortingly above her shoulder.
"Show me the perfect queen, Talanji, and I will show you a monument of stone. Perfect rulers live only in memory. Your mistakes will be forgotten when your victories and triumphs come. You have already faced so much. Too much. If only I could be there to guide you."
"You do," Talanji murmured.
"You guide me every day."
"Time to go." Bwonsamdi watched them quietly from the corner of the balcony, but now he pointed to the setting sun.
"The queen needs her rest, and 'tis time I returned you to my care, Rastakhan."
The king nodded, taking one long last look at his daughter.
"Remember, Talanji, you are more than just my daughter, more than blood. You are the queen Zandalar deserves. You will make your ancestors proud, as you have already made me proud."
Talanji nodded, bracing for the moment when he left her.
"Goodbye, father." "Goodbye, sweet little Sorid. Be brave, daughter." "I will."
His spirit dissipated, dissolving into the cool dusk breeze like a soft puff of pollen, carried away and spread across the jungle on the wind. Bwonsamdi had already gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts and her kingdom. The fires had gone out. Tomorrow she would address her people. The Zanchuli Council must meet. Petitions must be heard. The work of a queen never ended.
"I will be brave, father," Talanji thought. "I already am."
Epilogue.
"That power will be your prison,"
the Lich King warned, but he was a broken thing, and no longer her concern.
"This world is a prison."
At last! Sylvanas Windrunner's hands tightened around the helmet, finding the weak spots, digging in, savoring the deep breath in before the plunge. It had all led to this moment. All the power she had accumulated, all the bargains she had struck, all the promises she had made. Wraith-like wisps of ice gathered around her, the glacial exhalation of the mountains pouring down around her. Ice-crowned citadel breached, its lord defeated. Power surged through her. Power unmatched. Ecstasy's twin. The helm of domination brittle in her grasp. The prison of Ner'zhul. The crown of Arthas Menethil. Splitting down the middle, snapping like a bone. The barrier between the mortal realm and the Shadowlands, indeed the very maw itself, was so perilously thin there. She could feel the other world vibrating just on the other side, as if eagerly awaiting her arrival. The helm seared her hands, resisting her, but Sylvanas had come ready. It could not resist the irresistible, the power of death and unmaking itself. She felt a scream well in her gut before it poured out of her. The helm of domination sundered, ripped in two, the blast from its breaking roaring up toward the sky, mingling with her cry. And then it was done, and the helm useless. Dropped at her feet, just rubbish for the pile. Bolvar Foredragon, the Lich King, a hulk of armor and cracked skin, riddled with arrows, stared up at her, and then at the sky, silent in dumb wonderment at what she had done, at all that she had accomplished. Let him stare, she thought. Let him wonder. He was nothing now, alive but as broken and useless as Menethil's crown, to be forgotten and left behind. And I, she finished her thought, will set us all free. A new world was opening itself up to them, unfurling, the sky as torn and broken as the helm on the ground. The winds howled, her cloak whipped at her knees, the heat of the helm still pulsed in her palms. Sylvanas gazed upon the tower that reached toward her from above, slender and dark, beckoning her like a finger. She obliged. She took a step forward, closer to the realm of death. She could already hear a chorus of wails, as high and sharp as the gales screaming down off the mountains of Icecrown. Here the wind tore at her just as steadily, but her gaze lay fixed on the way ahead. The maw gathered, churning out its endless dark dirge, waiting and hungry. She felt the ground suddenly tremble and ceased her advance. Black swirls gathered, then funneled toward the snow-covered peak. When the darkness abated, Nathanos was there, kneeling, his hand still clutching the empty vial. "My champion," Sylvanas purred. "Your timing could not be better. Tell me of your victory as we take these first steps together." Nathanos stood, slowly, and she noticed a tremble in his hands. Before he could even get his bearings, she felt simmering anger in her soul begin to boil. The story was etched in sorrow across his face.
I failed you, my queen. Bonsandi lives. Sira Moonwarden has been captured. I could not carry out your command. The Horde, they came in force. They resisted us. I fear that Bonsandi will only grow more defiant now.
Sylvanas slid her gaze from his blubbering lips to the tower looming above. His failure would complicate things considerably, and soured the triumph that had a moment ago felt so complete. She raised her head higher, closing her eyes briefly. In the back of her mind, Sorfang's baritone mocked her. "You just keep failing." With a snarl, she silenced the long-dead voice and dug her nails into her gloved palms. Nathanos stared at her, and his lips quivering with rage, his veneer cracking as he struggled, no doubt to contain all the excuses and justifications he had prepared, and that she would not hear. Sylvanas could strike him, scream, and hollow out his soul, but it would not correct the failing. Only forward momentum would do that. This was a blow, but one she felt sure they could overcome. It would not be easy, but then her mission required great sacrifice. "Must I tell you to go?" Nathanos swallowed hard, crushing the vial in his hand, a crunch like bone. The shimmering dust slid between his fingers like sand.
"I will return to the Maristead, my lady, and await your orders."
She heard the note of hope in his voice, fragile as a fledgling dropped from the nest. "Go where you will, Nathanos, but do not be idle. The Loa knows the Shadowlands well. I expect you will return to me with means to prevent his meddling." Sylvanas flicked her fingers, as if ridding herself of a speck of muck. "My path lies ahead." And so it did. And so she continued, for power sought power, and she would have more of it, not for its own sake, but to wield it. The unjust ladder of their lives must be dismantled, not rung by rung, but all at once, all of it. She had been the plaything of a self-righteous cosmos for long enough. The jailer, too, understood what must be done. She did not know if or when Nathanos left. It mattered not. She had merged entirely with the shadows there already, part of the darkness at last.
Thank you all so much for listening to Shadows Rising, a property of Blizzard Entertainment, written by Madeleine Roux and read by Roy Stevens. I hope you enjoyed this series and look forward to more as they release. Special thanks to my wife Sarah, who was quiet during the recordings, and to my cat Willow, who was not. Further thanks goes to the members of the Seven Serpents Guild on Argent Dawn EU, who tuned in to the recording sessions each week. If you are playing World of Warcraft, I hope you are enjoying the new expansion as much as we are. Go Necrolords! Once again, thank you for listening.